welcome to our podcast, Coffee Time with AHK Vietnam. I think today we picked a very important topic, also a topic which is discussed all over the world now. And we have a very nice occasion now because we will celebrate in Vietnam the Vietnamese Women Day. That's very interesting. Besides the Vietnamese Women Day, we also celebrate in Vietnam the International Women's Day on March 8 every year. And I think this underline and also appreciate what women are doing for the society, but also for the business. Today, it's my outstanding honor to have a very special guest, Ms. Thuy, here with us. Thank you very much for coming and to talk with us. Ms. Thuy is the president of the Fullbright University here in Vietnam. And before she joined the Fullbright University, she was also very strong in business, so she managed a lot of really international companies, big international players, mainly from North America or even from Australia here in Vietnam. So she has really a fundamental experience in doing business and also how a woman can be successful in business, and also now as a president of the Fullbright University, I think is a quite challenging job. Welcome again. Again, it's really my pleasure. You are very famous here in Vietnam, and it's a big honor for us to have you as a guest. Let's start immediately, please, and let's talk about the first topic, leadership. You know that in our management culture, we always try to create a management board. We try to bring together different types of people, and also, if possible, to have a good balance between women and men in the same team. And in our culture, we really appreciate that, and we see more and more, not so long time ago, what is the advantage to involve actively women in business and also women in a leadership position. What do you think, what are the specific advantage of a woman in a leadership team?
Okay, so I think that sometimes people say that, okay, we are all the same, right? Whether in Vietnam or in other countries in the world. But later I will try to show that probably for historical reason, Vietnam may offer something that a little bit different than other countries. But in general, I think that one great thing that Vietnamese women or women in general bring to, I think, a team or a senior team is the kind of harmony that women always try to nurture. Now, when you look back in history, and then I think men, you are hunter, we are nurturer. So I think women's job tends to be, okay, let's take care of everybody and not try to exclude anyone out of the team. So bringing harmony and trying to maintain a more collegial kind of environment, whether it is at the C-suite level or in a larger team, women tend to do that. And so I think that that's one of the reasons why I know that these days board tend to say that, okay, you need to have, I think, 30% or 40% minimum of women coming into, I think, the decision-making body. The other things I think that women tend to, I hope that I'm a woman, so I just don't speak with a lot of bias. I think that women tend to do better is to, when presented with a decision or a tough decision, women tend to try to look at it from different perspective rather than one simple tunnel vision type of decision that men tend to have. So that's why women views sometimes is quite different from the man's view, and that's something that we need in a senior level decision-making body. But I think that just to summarize, I think that building a more collegial environment, and two is offer a complete different perspective just because of our role in the society to a decision-making process.
Okay. If I understand you correctly, so you mean that with a special attitude of women, so it's more suitable to solve conflicts, to manage really complex processes, and I also think as a president of a university, so you have to deal with many stakeholders, even in a very international environment. So you have to deal, for sure, with people from Vietnam, with private people, with government people. It's the same on the American side, I guess. So would you say it's an advantage that you are a woman as a president of Fulbright?
I don't know. I think that, of course, a lot of people say that one of my biggest strengths is the ability to bring a lot of stakeholders with sometimes conflicting agenda together to support, I think, a noble cause, right? So I think that I just don't know. It is mainly because I'm a woman or it is just me. But I think that women tend to work harder on that than men because women love to gather people and then making sure that everybody are listened to and then being taken care of. And so I hope that that's the strength that the women can bring to the table.
And would you say this is the same case in a company with a more strict business purpose, so maybe just to sell and to orient it on numbers and selling numbers? You think also here a woman is more suitable, or is a woman more suitable for more complex management tasks?
I think complexity tend to work better with women. I think single-minded decision tend to be taken by men. But I think at the end of the day, even if it is a one single decision that you have to make, like, okay, sell or close it down, I think there must be someone already look at all the consequences of the decision, right? Because it just can't be, okay, just go and do it and ignoring all the consequences. So that's why I think that even in that situation and when tough decisions are made, women tend to bring in the perspective of, okay, what will be the consequences once a decision is made? And that will help the decision-making process to be more like a well-researched, well-thought of, and well-informed. Yeah.
I see. And now so my background, of course, is German. And sometimes in Germany we think, or we're also afraid, when you have a woman in a management position, comparing with a man attitude. So a man is doing the job during the day, yeah, and then he goes home and can leave the job behind in the office, yeah. And we always afraid a bit that women are not able to do that, and they are going home and they take the problems at home, and then they are not really relaxed anymore, and so they keep the problems always in mind. Would you say is it true, or how women can handle that?
Yeah, no, I agree with you that men tend to, so you go home and after a really long and hard day, you turn on the TV, you drink beer, and then you take your mind off work completely, right? Women tend to linger with all these thoughts. But at the same time, I think that since women have so many other kind of distraction in life, right? So you go home, you may have to even to look after the person who take their mind off completely, right? So that would be another way of doing it. Or so many other things, house chores or children, and so we have another way of balance ourselves. But it doesn't mean that, okay, we just forget completely what happened in the office. Women tend not to forget completely. I agree with you. But at the same time, since you know how women handle so many things, it is multitasking all the time, right? You write a report, but at the same time, I think the phone rings and then the headmasters of your children's school calling, you still have to do it at the same time. So multitasking is our nature, so we could manage it. Not ideal from your perspective, but it is not like a life and death. Yeah.
But how women can balance that? So do you have a special advice for our female audience?
Okay, so that's why I go back to one thing that Vietnam society probably helped women a lot. And now, when you look at our history and you see that why so many Vietnamese women doing so many important positions in so many sectors, right? It is not only in the women-like sectors. Then my personal view, people may disagree with me, is that just because of our history, with all the wars that last 100 years and several hundred years, men tend to go to the battlefield. And women at home, you are supposed to do everything, including job that men's supposed to do. So when men return from the battlefield, they seems to accept, and the society also accepted the concept that, okay, women would be able to do everything. So I think that at least for us, women, we in Vietnam, we do not have to jump through so many social stigma about working or being the boss and all this kind of thing. But the other thing that you live in Vietnam, you know that I think that the social support is really strong here. So it helps women even if you go out and work. So you have the family who support you, you have the system in the society that if you need help, you can always find help for housework.
That's very interesting, and I think you built a nice bridge already. So about the Vietnamese or the specifics in a Vietnamese society. It's also for me, so I live in Vietnam and work in Vietnam since 11 years, and 50% of our management board is also female board and by women. But what you just described, would you say is really changed now in Vietnam today? Because I see that women are doing really an incredible job in our office, but after that, so they are really responsible and they have to take care about children, they have to manage the family. Very often the husbands are not really able to do that or to take care of themselves. So this is also for us foreigners always or sometimes a bit strange, and it's really, we are really full of respect what women are doing or have to do in the Vietnamese society. You are right, so they get a lot of support from the parents-in-law, but at the end of the day, they have really to manage a lot of things. So how you could do that?
I remember when I worked with a major international organization many years ago in the late 80s, in the early 90s in Vietnam, right, when there are not many foreigners in the country. And the person who runs the Vietnam, the country role, the country manager's role, he kept telling me that, okay, I wonder what Vietnamese women, how they could cope with, okay, they have to work. And most of the time in the office, they were assigned a bigger task than most of the other team members, right? Here, he mentioned men. And then after work, you had to go to the market to buy grocery, and then you even have to pick up the kids, bring them home, cook the dinner at the same time, giving a bath to the children, have a dinner, and then after
school uniforms.
and then after that you have to do the dishwashing, and then look after all the homework of the children, and then you have to basically to make sure that your husband is happy and okay, and on top of that, you have to make sure that your parents and your parents-in-law are okay. And so when they put it all together, it looks like a humongous task. I think that maybe we were born and then we grew up like that. My generation, I think that the younger generation now, probably it changed a bit, right? Because they can live independently and separately from the parents or the parents-in-law. But my generation, it was like it is just a fact. That's how you do it.
I think, so this is my personal impression, that all the Vietnamese traditions, they are changing very slow. So sometimes I ask the young men in my company, do you can iron? Do you can cook? And all say, no. And they even feel more, why our boss ask me things like that? But so I'm not really so optimistic that this tradition will
Okay,
change.
yeah, I think that it is, again, it goes back to education. And this is one thing that at Fulbright we try to change, not change, but then to help the younger generation to understand, I think, the importance of a certain survival skill, like ironing, cooking a simple meal, if there is no one around you to do it. And I think that it goes with education, because without it, I think all the children, they take it for granted that that's how the housework is supposed to be taken care of and to be shared between men and women. So I believe that education is important. Yeah.
Okay. And now I really have to ask you maybe for two recommendations. Yeah, maybe recommendation number one for all the foreign managers working in Vietnam. When they have to, when they work with a female staff and also with a female manager, because you would never complain, right? And also never towards the foreign manager. So the foreign manager, so you have to know a lot about your female manager, about the family background. So you have to assume the daily burdens, and then you have also to estimate by yourself. Yeah, can I ask her to do the business trip, a second business trip, and so on. So you have really to assume a lot by yourself, and maybe 80% you are right, 20% you are mistaken, and so on. Do you have advice so how a foreign manager should work in Vietnam, maybe in general, but also how to work? What is the suitable way to support also your female manager?
Now, I assume that you will have a very competent and reliable HR person in charge of, I think, the staff, and so who would be able to come to you and then with a certain recommendation that this is not the right way to do it, or this is a little bit like an overstep the boundary. I think that surrounding yourself with, I'm sure that most of the international managers in Vietnam, their PA or their personal assistant or executive assistant, the majority of them were women, right? So now you will know a lot through your EA or PA. But then your question is that, am I going to understand whether my EA or PA is coping correctly or badly at work? And of course, your HR should be the one who would be able to come to you and then tell you what is right and what is wrong. I'm not too worried about the new generation, about the Gen Z or even Gen Y, because they have learned to be more vocal, and they have the habit of expressing themselves stronger than the millennial or the generation like my generation or the generation before that. So more and more with, I think, with international or globalization and a lot of people coming in, I think that they started understanding that they can express themselves, whether they like or they don't like. They would be able to say that without worrying too much about, am I hurting someone or am I overstepping my role or my responsibility. But I think that for all international managers coming to Vietnam, I highly recommend that you have a very reliable, competent, and straight shooting HR person. Yeah.
Okay, I see. And maybe the second recommendation to this young male generation here in Vietnam. So even they intend to slightly change something and maybe go out a bit from the tradition and to bring something forward, to make some progresses. So what would your recommendation? So how they should do that? So they should start to have a dialogue with their parents, or just do it, or how really to make a effect? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that for a lot of parents who may be watching this, I would highly recommend that sometimes they just let them go and just don't hold on to all their boys too closely and then persistently. Most of the young generation now, they have a chance to live outside the family, so they would learn some skill, probably not all the skills that require to make them, I think, a more confident and then effective in the working environment. But I think that it is not only the kids, sometimes it is the parents who need to change their way of looking at life for the children.
Okay, very, very interesting. And let's come to another topic. So in preparation of this podcast, my staff told me I also have to raise all the CSR activities. And they told me, of course, yeah, women are more suitable to roll out CSR activities. They are more sensitive and they are more suitable than men, for example. Would you also see this in the same way? I was a bit surprised. Yeah.
No, I think on that I would disagree, because CSR actually thinking that only women we have a softer heart, that going into CSR and then doing all the kind things to make the world is a better place. I don't think that it is only the women who have that desire. Men also have a very, very strong desire to do it, but maybe the approach could be different. That's so the man or the male senior managers may look at the issue and say, okay, I will allocate this sum of money from our annual budget to go and do X, Y, Z. Women may just say, okay, let's look at the 100 things and then try to do 50 things. We all care about the same thing, but then the approach may be different. So that's why I think that on the board, when you have both men and women, we complement each other so well, because women can make some suggestion and the men can look at it and say, okay, let's measure the social impact and how it works, right? Because men is very interested in knowing, I think, the result. Okay, what it. So, but then back to CSR. So that's my view. And when we look around at all the initiatives that we promoted, for example, at Fullbright, and you attended one event when we launched the scholarship for students with challenges. Actually, the one who sponsored it was, I think, a male, right? A man. And after he initiated such a program, I met him again in the US, and then he already talked to the community of men and women, and a lot of men joined his cause and wanted to support that same initiative in a bigger scale. So we just can't say that, okay, men don't care about CSR. I think they do care, but then their approach could be slightly different from our approach. But then together, we make it work.
So men very often comes from their own perspective or from the company's perspective, and women think more about also the people and how we really can support them in their individual constellation. Yeah. Okay, that's very interesting, and I think I also would agree on that.
Yeah. So we agree to disagree with whoever says.
Absolutely.
Yes, that's good. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I afraid so. I think it's a very interesting talk, a very interesting discussion, and maybe we could do it still until tomorrow. But unfortunately, so with the podcast, we have just a limited time. And but it was really an outstanding pleasure for me to talk to you. I think the topic is very important, not just for companies, I think also for society, and especially for all women all over the world, and especially also in Vietnam. I really would like to thank you to join our podcast, and I would like to say Happy Women's Day, and all the best to you and for your future.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me here, and thank you for a wonderful conversation. So I hope that we can continue this conversation over, I think, a coffee or I think a lunch in the future.
Thank you very much. We will do for sure.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, and it was a very special edition of our podcast. See you.